now. Hi everyone, I'm Samara Kathuria,
Hi, I'm Aisha Balsar.
and this is our interview with Shraddha Borawake of Chutneyverse. We really hope you enjoy.
Hi, welcome to another spotlight of UnifyChai. Today we have Shraddha, who is the founder of Chutneyverse, and we're going to be learning a little bit more about her origin and what inspired her to do this. So before we get started, the first question we have is what inspired you to establish Chutneyverse and the focus on food sovereignty?
Well, so I'm an artist who has been working in social impact for the past 20 years. And over my global travels and owing to my background coming from an agricultural community, I started noticing that our relationship to food was really dwindling. I think especially in the Western world, coming from Indian culture, this was a really huge kind of eye-opening experience that there's a lacuna here. And as an artist, my responsibility, as Nina Simone says, the artist's responsibility is to respond to the times. And I really felt that I had a lot of knowledge, not only around growing food, coming from an agricultural background, but also had this beautiful knowledge of the consciousness around food, because of um, the way we buy it, the way we look at it, the way we cook it, and the way we eat it and serve it and share it is a whole ecosystem in itself. And I feel the food business has not touched upon this, the consciousness of food. So Chutneyverse actually was a dream that awakened in 2016 when I was living in Rotterdam in Holland. And I was really impressed by the way that the fringe artists were organizing the society, their own society, and organizing the way in which they were using their resources to have a really good time. And that good time was getting together, cooking, and eating, because people didn't have the resources to go to restaurants or didn't have the resources to have other experiences. Uh, this was really interesting moment for me, and that's when I started thinking about what are the life hacks that we have in Indian culture that allow people to be able to access the tasty side of the plant kingdom, and chutneys was the answer. And so the name Chutneyverse has come from uh, the fact that we live in a multiverse and that eating a meal is not only about going and buying the vegetables and or the meat and eating it, but there's a whole universe around all of that. And I really wanted to sort of take it on, the multiversality of things. So therefore, Chutneyverse.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Okay, so now moving on, in your website and when reading about you, we saw that you talked a lot about like your grandmother and your mother and how they played a role in like your advocacy and your journey. So could you explain a little bit more on how they influenced you to start Chutneyverse and your journey?
Oh, definitely. So I come from a small sect of from India called the Mari Samaj. The Mari Samaj is actually known for a lot of amazing revolutionary thought around um, the self and the self in relation to society. The Jnaneshwari, which is like a Bhagavad Gita, is very much part of this. So in here we have the Varkaris, who are from the Bhakti tradition, are mainly the farmers of Maharashtra. So this is my background. And growing up on the farms and seeing my mother and my grandmother, they were actually living out the ideals that are written in these scriptures, which is about it's about a form of self-sovereignty working with the land, working with the non-living, non-human beings like animals, working with ecosystems. So one of my favorite memories of my grandmother, where she was really entrepreneurial, was that she had all of these different fruit trees that would bloom and bear fruit in different seasons. And she always kept track in the community of who liked what fruit. And like I would see her taking the bus and going to meet a relative and giving them this produce because they really loved a certain, like a sitafal or something like that. And I found that to be very enterprising of her, that these fruits were seen as a form of abundance. It was her capital. And this was very monumental for me, looking at a world where you see the three generations of women, and they were all sort of fighting for my liberation and freedom, where I could go and study and I could get a job in the corporate world or whatever the aspirations were. But I felt like the MBA was right at home with the way she was dealing with these fruits. And secondly, as we all know, that the farmer community in India hasn't had the nicest time in terms of, their dignity and their wealth and their abundance. So it's really the women who are working with the food industry to create that extra economy for the family. And she had this very famous kara masala, which she used to make and sell. And it was, of course, it wasn't an industry, but the people were really into it. And then she passed that on to my mom. And my mom, since we grew up on a farm, and we had to come up with different ways of income, so she started cooking and started this farm to fork restaurant, which till today is still an affordable place. Like, it is a place where students can go and eat. It is a place where regular people can go and eat. Even though she created this big brand, she still kept it humble. And so there's like a really nice balance here, where one part is like, oh, successfully working and creating products for the food industry, but at the same time still keeping that humility, that we as people working in food are here to serve nourishment to other people. And so these values have been really strong, and I've seen them work really hard day and night and still keep their identity as women, and not try to be something else. I found that very special, and I find that that's been my inspiration, watching them grow up, while growing up.
No, that's really inspiring. Thank you. The next question we have is, how do you integrate like ancient Indian sciences such as like yoga and Ayurveda and like these practices into your modern practices?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that I was in Shivatsal ground in Ladakh, listening to the Dalai Lama speak about Bodhisattva, and he basically very explicitly sent a request to the young people of Indian culture, telling us that, hey, the Buddhists have preserved this knowledge for our entire subcontinent, but it's time that the young people get in there and start working towards preserving and sharing this knowledge that is in our DNA and it's in our bones. So for example, with Ayurveda, I have every single menu of the Chutneyverse does speak to a certain Ayurvedic, um, like a point of a form of knowledge. So, like tamas, rajas, and sattva, these are the three very strong pillars of how our energy moves in relation to the energy of the food that is cooked. So, these kind of concepts I bring to life through these curated menu items. Like, I did a dinner with 3 chutneys, which were dedicated to the relationship of this way or modality. So we had a fire-inducing chutney for the tamas, because tamas is inertia. So what brings you out of inertia. The tamas is in the root chakra. So what is the root chakra? It's fire. And so if you want to ignite more fire, it's like you want to have more ginger, you want to have more chilies. And when you induce the fire, then the energy goes up. So this is like Kundalini science. I don't know. I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just a research-based artist who has spent many, many years going and collecting knowledge, and I'm just trying my best to disseminate it in a really creative way. I also feel that there's a lot of myths around the understanding of terms like yoga. So for me, when we speak in Marathi and we say yog asto, which means this is like a coincidence or an alignment or a serendipity, that is because the entire your energy system is aligned with the energetic flow outside. And that's when things come together. And it's like that awareness of when they come together, what we do with that is what I consider to be the entire, definition of yoga from my, little cultural sect that I come from. Um, in terms of astrology, I think that it's very interesting that we are in communion with the stars and the planets. So a lot of times, like maybe during an eclipse, you're really not trying to eat very heavy food because you're trying to digest planetary movements. And so digesting a planetary movement is also part of food. And so these are like, I think for me, it's like more about expanding on these ideas and taking them out of the limited frames in which they are all again being fragmented and being separated, but actually, according to the ancient ways, I feel that they're more intertwined, and that's why it's Chutneyverse, like it's that universe that is all cosmically intertwined with each other.
Like seeing all of these connections that you've pointed out and trying to like make these worlds merge into the multiverse. So how do you think people receive this integration of like different Indian sciences and practices to like food and like chutney, I guess, and how you stay true to it over time?
Yeah, that's a really big question that actually I think about all the time. Well, first of all, I think people are super fascinated because the way I'm sharing it is not in any kind of final way. It's through an experience. So it's all on the table, and you can take what you want, digest what you want, and then you sort of put away what you don't want. And this is, I think, another sort of talking about social impact. This is something that I'm trying to bring towards a harmonic kind of convivial or a social space that I'm trying to create here with Chutneyverse. So people are super fascinated. Like at this dinner, we had the concept of Annapurna because I really feel my mother is an Annapurna, and I've been born out of a womb of an Annapurna, and I wanted to share with everybody what does that feel like. When I did a study, I found out that the story of Annapurna is so interesting. It goes into Shiv Shakti, and it goes into the dance between the material and the immaterial. So in that sense, I just shared the mythology before we went into actually eating the food. And hopefully now that I'm building this platform, very slowly ground up, I think the next few dinners I will start having my artist books there because that's what I do. I create artist books and start creating a zine for everyone and actually re-mythologize it because I think in a world where everybody is really torn between what is and what is not, and the definition of truth is really, really questionable out there. I think stories and mythologies are a really great place to keep things subjective, and that's where I feel like as a storyteller, uh, I'm just a steward of some knowledge that is coming through me, but I don't feel like I would ever want to call myself some kind of an expert on all of this stuff.
Great, thank you so much. The next question we have is, we saw on your website that you're from New York. So we were wondering like what challenges that you face as a South Asian advocating for food sovereignty in New York City, and if there's anything that you have to like inspire others in the same region as you to do something similar.
Yeah, so I just moved to New York 3 years ago, and I think one of the reasons why I love New York is because there's a huge community of artists who are trying to push the boundary and are extremely supportive. So when one goes into that, I think that identity can either be your greatest asset or your biggest enemy. And I've been really trying to tackle that by really embracing all of the gifts and the jewels that we have as Indian people. I mean, we have so much. And we actually come from a very loving culture that is extremely inclusive, just based on how many different kinds of people there are in India and that we're used to growing up with, and also the understanding of like, the fact that there's something larger than us. And I think that has been really a great, great asset to lean on. I think being a South Asian, there's always a danger of exoticizing, and there's always a danger of not being included based on the fear that's out there towards people like us. And I that challenge is a really interesting one, and I think that challenge goes back to how much does identity rule your flow of life. And so there are many times where I have felt like, oh, maybe this door did not open for me because I come from a certain place and I'm carrying this, this impression within me, and also the way that others see me regardless of my actions. So, how does one really truly navigate that is by leaning on the power of the knowledge that we carry, and not getting disheartened by the rejection, because somewhere I feel that I've I've I feel that there's this big bank, like all of us have this big bank in the sky. And for every time we lose something, I think it's collecting interest up there to be showered as blessings later. And and I truly feel that people who come from the other world or the majority world are being called to be teachers today. And if one can look at everyone as someone who is just on a certain journey of learning, then one can be more compassionate towards themselves when they realize that a lot of things don't have to do with us. But we take them on because of the narrative that's out there that gives us a chance to kind of step back or hold ourselves back. So I'm really trying to navigate that through this understanding that identity is second and like energy is first. So how can I work on making my energy so confident and so pure and like be with the flow of life? Because like I think universe has our back.
Perfect. I love that response, especially when you're talking about how like you want to make your energy a lot more pure. So then going into, I guess, like the different like purity levels and like how you present yourself, you address like a lot of mental and psychological traps in your research that you faced. So unlike consumerism and plastic use, how do you really get above them, and how do you like change them and like help address them within your research?
Well, I think firstly, personally, it's really important to understand that we are, even though we have a body, we also have an energy field that can be cleansed every day. And this is where things get sticky when we create mental formations. So I have this very radical idea that every single thing that we've created has come from a mental formation. So we are the source of that thing, and that is not something that exists alongside with us. It is very much a part of us. In terms of plastic, I think like plastic has its own consciousness, like the mushroom world does. And we need plastic. I mean, listen, spend a week without any plastic in your life. You are going to feel so happy when you find that Ziploc bag. You're going to be like, Ziploc bag is my best friend. And so this is where, in terms of garbage and the age of garbs, which is the project that is alongside with Chutneyverse, really tackles with a radical call to action that what if we turned our garbage into something sacred and we elevated it up to something that could give us the answers of where does it want us to go. So, for example, I think a lot of the material may start talking to us and be like, repurpose me. A lot of the material may say, you don't need me. You don't need packaging. You don't need insane amount of all these things. And I think like one of the ways I dealt with that is that every single chutney verse that I've had till now, we have composted all of the food scraps from that dinner. Um, but it's a challenge. I mean, out there, there isn't much like activated action around us dealing with the colossal amounts of garbage that we're creating. And I think then it goes back to Chutneyverse, because if we were balanced within ourselves and if we understood that our sovereign powers are so supreme in terms of making collective decisions to end certain kind of packaging norms and saying that, hey, as a consumer, I never asked for this thing to last for 30 years that I'm putting into my body as a packaged good, which is why behind that packaging, you have so many legal disclaimers and you have the FDA standing behind and all of these systems, right? So I think for that is like, so for example, like when you make a chutney out of like a pumpkin, right? I have these really great pumpkin chutney recipes and you use the whole pumpkin. There's no way that a single unit home with a single person living in it could finish all of that pumpkin chutney. So what do? The solution is to knock on your neighbor's door and be like, hey, I made some chutney. Would you like to have some? So the solutions are pretty cute. And with my work, I'm just trying to illuminate how one can act on these things in such a simple way. And I feel once you open a door to something new, it's just like the energy rushes in for more things. I mean, that's how the world works, right? So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that did. Thank you. We're also wondering, like, we saw all these like amazing things that Chutneyverse did right now. We were wondering, like, what future goals and plans that you have for Chutneyverse that you want to see like executed in the future.
Well, the first goal is to create a really good community around Chutneyverse. So in that, cover everyone from people who are living in the city looking for a new relationship to food, to farmers who want to connect with people who are looking for good relationship to food, as well as work with different products that are trying to help people improve their lifestyle. And at some point, start creating a platform where the recipes and the knowledge that I have and all of the different life of action tools can be accessed by the public, even if they can't make it for a dinner. So right now I'm sort of in this phase where it's like, okay, first let the project get known for its core ethics and its core beliefs, because this is really important to me, is that there is love in the community, there is love in the brand, there's a love in the project. So when it grows, the love will grow. And that could be so many different things. And in there, there's also workshops. I think a lot of people don't have access to a good relationship with their own cooking schedule. So I definitely want to, get in there and tackle this problem for a single unit home for those of us, all of us who live in one apartment by ourselves. I mean, this is the core audience that I'm trying to connect with right now.
Perfect. We love that response, and we love talking to and learning about Chutneyverse and all of the different journeys and all of your different practices that you've taken to grow this community. But before we let you go, we just had one quick question. So in our platform, what we normally do is ask everyone we interview if they have a favorite snack to eat with chai and what significance around it is.
Yeah, so I love to have with chai is okay, this is a really good one. Which one do I pick? I mean, pakoras and chai is one of the best things ever because it just reminds you of monsoon and it reminds you of all the beautiful moments that you have with pakoras. You can have pakoras at a chai stall. You can have pakoras which are homemade. And also, I love that pakoras are so easy to make. So it's like you have someone coming over for chai, and then what's the last minute thing you can make is pakoras. So definitely my answer is that.
Perfect. And then if it's possible, if you could send a recipe you have for pakoras that you like or your family's been making, we would really appreciate that. But other than that, we truly had a great time interviewing you, and we really hope to see the growth of Chutneyverse and stay in tune with your journey.
Oh, thank you so much. I love what you guys are doing with UnifyChai. I think it's so beautiful and it's so meaningful. And I just hope that this grows beyond everything you ever imagined.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking your time out to do this. We really appreciate that as well.
Thank you.